We're taking aim at one of the most stubborn cultural myths out there today, which is this deeply ingrained idea that alcohol acts as a kind of magical truth serum.
Right?
You know, we see in movies all the time. Someone has a few too many drinks and their filter drops and they say something shocking and everyone in the room gasps.
And they assume the real them has finally come out.
Exactly, like the real them is finally here. But we have some incredible source material today that completely dismantles this idea, arguing that the drink version of a person isn't their real self at all.
Right, it's a totally different angle.
Yeah, so we are diving into the writings and a lived experience of Susan Gast. And she is the founder of livebettersober.com. And we have to highlight a massive milestone right at the top here.
Absolutely. It's just huge.
Yeah, Susan quit drinking on January 17th, 1998. She was 37 years old, which means she was fast approaching 30 years of continuous sobriety.
30 years.
3 decades.
It's an incredible vantage point to have. Because when you have nearly 30 years of distance from a habit, you aren't just in survival mode anymore.
Right, you're not just getting through the day.
Exactly. You have the clarity to look back and dissect the mechanics of exactly how the trap worked. And her core thesis, it completely flips the script on that pop culture myth.
Because she spent years believing it, right?
Yeah, she spends years believing that alcohol is this key unlocking her true personality, only to realize decades later that it was actually a mask. Like it was suppressing who she actually was rather than revealing it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how that trap snaps shut, we really need to look at the initial illusion. Susan writes about her very first experience with alcohol. She was 17 years old on a first date with the man who would eventually become her first husband. And she takes a sip of cider. And just that one sip, it fundamentally alters her perception of herself.
Yeah, she describes it perfectly.
She says the self-consciousness just evaporating, and suddenly she feels like a very young Wonder Woman.
Which, I mean, it makes perfect sense when you look at the psychological landscape of a 17-year-old.
That's for sure.
Because when you think about it, adolescence is a complete paradox.
Yeah.
You are desperately trying to fit in and be accepted by the group, but you're also trying to stand out and forge this unique, independent identity.
It's an exhausting mental tightrope to walk.
Completely exhausting, especially on a first date when you just want to impress someone.
Right. You're a bundle of nerves. You don't have a fully formed identity yet. So the anxiety of trying to project one is just overwhelming.
Yes.
And then she takes this sip of cider, which, you know, it's sweet, and it masks the harshness of the alcohol.
Right. It doesn't even taste like a drink, really.
Exactly. And it acts like an off switch for that anxiety.
Yeah.
It's easy to see how a teenager would feel that sudden rush of being outgoing and carefree and immediately conclude, oh, this is it. This is the real me.
But that's the fundamental contradiction she points out in her writings. Like, how can a substance reveal your real self when you haven't even lived long enough to know who that is yet?
That's such a good point.
At 17, your brain is literally still under construction. The prefrontal cortex, which handles complex decision-making and personality expression, isn't fully developed. So the alcohol wasn't revealing a finished building. It was just temporarily shutting down the alarm system on the construction site.
Wow, shutting down the alarm system.
Yeah, it muted the anxiety of not knowing who she was, which felt like confidence, but it was entirely chemical.
It makes me think about how we try on different identities when we're young. And using a chemical shortcut to find your personality is kind of like using a funhouse mirror to check your outfit.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right, because it distorts absolutely everything. But if you happen to catch an angle that makes you look taller or wilder or more confident in that specific moment, you trick yourself into thinking that the reflection is reality.
You choose to believe the distortion.
Yeah, because it's easier than doing the hard work of actually building that confidence from scratch.
And that's the danger of the illusion. You become dependent on the distortion. You start to believe that you can't access that taller, more confident version of yourself without standing in front of the funhouse mirror.
Wow, yeah.
And that perfectly sets up the shift from how Susan was feeling internally to how this actually began dictating her behavior in the real world.
Which brings us to a really pivotal story from her writings. Because that Wonder Woman feeling is a fragile chemical illusion. And trying to stretch that illusion over real-world anxiety is where things get really complicated. So fast forward a few years, Susan is 20, and she moves from a working farm in England where she is literally milking cows, raising sheep, and tending goats.
Just a completely different life.
Completely. To a condominium in Florida. Completely alone in a new country. Her parents haven't even arrived yet.
The culture shock is staggering. I mean, you're going from the deep familiarity and quiet rhythm of rural English farm life to the sensory overload of Florida in the late 70s or early 80s.
Exactly. And down the road from her new condo is a Holiday Inn, and she wants to go check out the local hotel bar just to see it, maybe meet some people.
But the isolation and the novelty of the environment are paralyzing.
She is terrified. She doesn't think she can walk through those doors sober, so she stays at the condo and drinks a couple of beers first entirely to manufacture the nerve to walk down to the hotel.
What's fascinating here is we see the psychological wiring happening in real time.
Yeah.
Her brain is actively creating a false link between the concept of alcohol and the concept of confidence. She is confusing lowered inhibitions with genuine self-assurance.
Because of that funhouse mirror effect.
Exactly. She believes she absolutely needed those beers to walk into a room full of strangers.
But wait, I'm looking at this Florida story, though, and playing devil's advocate for a second.
Yeah.
From a purely functional standpoint, the beer did its job.
How do you mean?
Well, she was isolated, she wanted to go out, she drank, and it got her through the door.
Okay.
It's hard to argue with the immediate utility of that right.
Mm-hmm.
If the goal was to get into the Holiday Inn, the strategy worked.
It achieved the immediate outcome, absolutely. But we have to look at the mechanism of how it worked and the long-term cost of that mechanism.
Okay.
Susan explicitly tackles this in her work. She points out that liquid courage isn't actual courage.
Right.
Courage, by definition, is feeling the fear and deciding to take the action anyway. It requires your conscious mind to override your anxiety. The alcohol didn't give her the fundamental personality trait of bravery. It just depressed her central nervous system to the point where the fear didn't register the same way.
So it's basically a chemical bypass.
Yes.
You don't learn how to handle the fear, you just temporarily delete it.
Precisely. And she raises a brilliant diagnostic question in her writings. If you feel you need to medicate yourself with alcohol just to endure an environment, should you really be in that environment at all?
Oh, wow. That's a tough question.
Often the anxiety is there for a reason. It's your brain telling you that you're out of your depth or in a situation that doesn't align with who you are. True courage, in Susan's view, would have been showing up sober, walking into that room and trusting herself to navigate the discomfort.
Because the beers just changed her behavior for a few hours.
Exactly. They didn't change who she was, but they convinced her that she couldn't survive social situations without a crutch.
Which is such a universal trap. We all have things we lean on to fake confidence when we feel out of place, especially when we're young.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But when you rely on lowered inhibitions as a primary social strategy, you run into a major biological problem. You don't get to choose which inhibitions are lowered.
That is so true.
Right? It's not a surgical strike on just your social anxiety. It's a blanket effect that takes out your judgment and your tact and your self-awareness right along with the fear.
That is the tragic irony of the truth serum myth. The idea that a substance reveals your true self ignores the fact that a massive part of your true self is your prefrontal cortex, your restraint, your values, your ability to read a room.
All of that goes offline.
Yeah, when you chemically disable that part of your brain, the erratic behavior that follows isn't the real you finally breaking free. It's just a severely compromised version of your brain operating without its steering wheel.
And Susan is radically transparent about what that looked like in reality. She talks about wanting so desperately to fit in that she would go way further than she should have.
I mean, we've all been there to some degree.
Yeah, she writes about hearing herself say outrageous things, using language she would never normally use, acting unnaturally tough, and just trying way too hard to impress people. The result is a mountain of embarrassing, cringe-inducing moments. She actually jokes that the cringe could fill an entire book all by itself.
It's a feeling anyone who has ever overindulged knows intimately. That morning after panic when the memories start filtering back in.
What's the worst?
But what's really compelling is how Susan utilizes that exact feeling in her recovery work today. In her 66-day course, which she designed to help people break the nightly drinking habit, she leans heavily into a concept called somatic markers.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because she talks about somatic markers here, which it sounds highly clinical for what is essentially just weaponizing your own cringe, right? Like using that visceral stomach-dropping feeling as a guardrail.
Exactly. To understand how, here we have to look at a bit of neuroscience.
Okay.
A somatic marker is essentially a mechanism by which emotional processes guide our behavior, particularly decision-making.
So how does that work in this context?
Well, when you experience a highly embarrassing or traumatic social moment, your amygdala, which is the emotional center of your brain, it tags that memory with a strong physical sensation. It's actually an evolutionary survival tool.
So it's your body physically remembering the mistake to make sure you never do it again.
Yes, when you recall the memory, you don't just think about it intellectually. Your nervous system recreates the physical feeling.
All right.
Your stomach drops, your face flushes, your heart rate spikes. You physically wince. Those cringe-worthy moments from Susan's drinking days are textbook somatic markers.
But wait, aren't those cringy memories just a source of shame that makes people feel worse? I mean, the conventional wisdom in a lot of recovery spaces is to avoid shame, right?
Yeah, that's usually what people say.
Because if you just sit around dwelling on all the embarrassing things you did, doesn't that just drive you deeper into a shame spiral? Which ironically might make someone want to drink more just to numb the shame.
That is the exact trap, if you view the memories purely as a source of shame. But Susan's brilliance is in the reframing. She teaches you to take the shame out of the driver's seat and put it in the passenger seat as a navigator.
Oh, I see.
When the temptation strikes, when your brain tries to romanticize the alcohol and tell you that a drink will make you confident and fun like Wonder Woman, you intentionally call up one of those somatic markers.
So you deliberately force yourself to feel the cringe.
You force yourself to feel it physically. And suddenly, it's not an intellectual debate about whether you should have a drink. It's a biological stop sign. You are using the neurological pain of the past to protect your decisions in the present. You weaponize the embarrassment so that it works for you instead of against you.
That is such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
Because you can't go back and edit the past. You can only utilize it.
Exactly.
And for Susan, all of those somatic markers, all of those distorted funhouse mirror moments they eventually accumulated until the mirror just completely shattered.
Yeah.
Which brings us to January 17th, 1998, the breaking point.
And this is another myth that her story busts. In pop culture, rock bottom is almost always portrayed as this massive, cinematic public disaster.
Like a dramatic intervention.
Right, a dramatic intervention, or losing a job, or crashing a car.
But for Susan, it was profoundly private and honestly just deeply miserable physically.
Yeah.
She woke up, in her words, sick as a dog. And she makes a very charming point to apologize to dogs for the comparison.
Yeah, I loved that detail.
But she's dealing with vomiting diarrhea, stomach cramps, so intense she joked she thought she'd eaten the beer cans. And on top of all of that, she had the MOA, the mother of all headaches.
The physical reality had simply overridden the chemical illusion.
Right. It was the moment she realized the habit wasn't even serving its original flawed purpose anymore.
No, not at all.
She was exhausted from waking up every morning, making a promise to herself that she wouldn't drink, and then breaking that exact promise every single night. The cycle was broken. That was the day the alcohol had to go.
Which introduces the most terrifying phase of this entire journey.
Because she has to face herself.
Because when you strip away a substance that you have used as an emotional crutch and a social strategy for your entire adult life, you are left with a massive void. And the unavoidable question is, if the drunk version of me, the one I thought was my real personality, was actually a distortion, then who am I?
So what does this all mean? Like, who is the real Susan when the distortion is gone?
That is the big question.
And the answer to that is honestly the most inspiring part of the source material.
Yeah.
Because when the alcohol gets out of the way, what follows is an absolute explosion of capability and potential.
Let's look at the hard evidence of what sober Susan goes on to accomplish, because the contrast to her drinking days is staggering.
Okay, first she goes to work in her brother's machine shop. And she's not just answering phones. She is physically running a lathe and a milling machine.
Wow.
She is making precision parts for automation machinery. You cannot operate heavy, highly calibrated industrial machinery with the mother of all headaches.
No, you really can't.
It requires a level of sustained focus and extreme presence of mind that a lowered inhibition state would completely destroy.
And that's just the beginning. The discipline required for that kind of precision work, it then translates into an incredible creative output a few years later.
Yeah. About 10 years into her sobriety, she catches the computer bug. And the floodgates open. She starts writing and publishing books, puzzle books, how-to books, journals, planners. She even writes romance novels under a pen name. Then she pivots into building websites.
Which is incredible complex work.
Yeah, she admits it became a bit of a wonderful obsession for her because she just fell in love with the pure creativity of building something out of nothing. She creates online courses covering everything from food dehydrating to the very sobriety programs that make up livebettersober.com today.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, let's analyze the underlying mechanics of that output.
Right.
What does it actually take to write books, build websites from scratch, and architect comprehensive online courses? It takes immense creativity, yes,
Yeah.
but it also takes a relentless work ethic.
Absolutely.
It takes the mental agility to constantly learn new, complex, technical skills. And above all, it takes a very deep, quiet, genuine confidence. The kind of confidence that doesn't need to shout over the music in a Florida hotel bar.
And Susan explicitly points out that drunk Susan could never have done any of these things. The mental bandwidth just wasn't there.
Yeah.
But the most profound realization she shares is that the alcohol wasn't hiding these incredible traits, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. It was actively suppressing them.
That is the core difference. The cultural myth tells us the real you is buried and alcohol digs it up. The reality, as Susan lived it, is that the real you is fully present and alcohol smothers it.
It smothers it, yeah.
Every ounce of that work ethic, that creativity, that technical brilliance, it was inside her the entire time. From the farm in England to the condo in Florida, it was just waiting patiently underneath the habit, waiting for the alcohol to finally get out of the way so she could get to work.
It fundamentally redefines how we should view potential. I mean, we spend so much time thinking we lack something like courage or creativity, so we reach for external things to artificially manufacture it.
Exactly. We look for the shortcut.
But Susan's nearly 30 years of sobriety prove that the capacity is already there. You don't need to add anything to yourself. You just need to stop suppressing what you already have.
And that leads to a deeply poignant reflection she makes near the end of the writings we're looking at. She asks herself a hypothetical question.
The time travel one.
Yeah, knowing everything she knows now, if she could time travel back to that very first date when she was 17, would she knock that first glass of cider out of her young hand?
You would think the answer is an immediate resounding yes.
You really would. And she says she probably would, but in the very next breath, she acknowledges a really complex truth. If she had knocked it away, she might never have gained this incredibly deep, hard-won insight into human behavior.
Right, right.
She wouldn't have this profound understanding of how self-image works, how confidence is actually built, and how subtly a substance can distort your thinking over time.
So the struggle was the crucible. She had to completely lose sight of herself in that funhouse mirror in order to understand what it actually takes to find herself.
And the journey itself became her ultimate qualification. The decades spent wrestling with that habit gave her the exact wisdom and empathy she now uses to help thousands of other people break their own cycles.
So to kind of recap this whole journey, from the 17-year-old relying on cider for a false sense of confidence to the realization that alcohol changes behavior rather than revealing identity, all the way to the incredible creative explosion that comes with nearly 30 years of sobriety. Susan realized that the very thing she thought was a bridge to her true self was actually a massive barrier.
A huge barrier, yeah.
Which leaves us with a fascinating and maybe slightly uncomfortable question to think about,
Big huh?
regardless of what our own relationship with alcohol looks like. Because we all have our own funhouse mirrors. We all have shortcuts we take.
We do. Human nature is to look for the path of least resistance when dealing with anxiety or a lack of confidence.
So if our truest, most capable potential is literally just sitting there waiting patiently for us to get out of our own way, what other crutches or habits in our own lives are we using right now to fit in or feel comfortable?
That's a great question.
And are those very same habits actually the things keeping our most creative, authentic selves locked in the waiting room? It's something to seriously consider next time we reach for a quick fix. Until next time, keep diving deep.